what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled "What if the US attacked Cuba?" Let's see what this video is about.
Cuba is 90 miles from Florida. Its power grid is collapsing in real time. It just lost its main oil supply, and there are Russian and Chinese spy bases on the island actively monitoring US military communications. The US has had Cuba on its list for over 60 years, but now it's starting to look more real than ever. And after what happened in Venezuela earlier this year, nobody doubts anymore that Washington is ready to pull the trigger. Why Cuba?
No, I don't think they're gonna attack Cuba. I mean, it's already kind of under attack in a way, no? But like when it comes to exports and all of that. But like attack.
January 29th, Trump signed Executive Order 14380, a full economic blockade of Cuba. The official reason? Cuba is hosting Russian and Chinese intelligence operations on its soil, and that part is real. There's a major Chinese signals intelligence base at Blockade, less than 100 miles from Florida, actively monitoring US military communications. Russia has reactivated its massive Soviet-era listening station near Havana. From Washington's perspective, that's not a diplomatic problem, that's a national security threat sitting in the backyard. But there's money involved too, obviously. US corporations have billions in legal claims against Cuba, property nationalized after the 1959 revolution. ExxonMobil is actively suing Cuban state companies. A successful regime change would open the door to the largest privatization of Cuban assets in history, and that kind of money has a way of pushing things forward. So the blockade goes up. Any country that sells oil to Cuba faces massive US sanctions. Mexico stops shipments immediately. The shadow fleet of tankers gets intercepted in the Caribbean. And Cuba, which already lost its Venezuelan oil lifeline when Maduro fell, starts running out of fuel fast. The eastern half of the island goes dark. Total blackout. Havana is seeing 18 to 20 hours without power every single day. Hospitals are struggling. Water pumps aren't running. Food is rotting because there's no refrigeration. Trump said it himself in March. Cuba is going to fall pretty soon, but we're focused on Iran right now. That last part matters because the timing of any attack depends entirely on what's happening in the Middle East. How they do it. The US has
I forgot that I'm filming a video for a while. I literally forgot that I was filming for a while. I was just listening to the video like oh my goodness. But I'm surprised, honestly. I can't believe I was watching the video like I would watch it alone. I'm sorry. I didn't comment anything. That's great.
Several ways in. And the most likely way this actually happens doesn't look anything like a traditional invasion. Here's the thing most people don't realize. The US...
See, this is what I mean though. Like, I don't think there's gonna be like an actual attack or an actual invasion. That would be... I don't think so.
Already has troops on Cuban soil, Guantanamo Bay, a 45 square mile naval base on the southeastern tip of the island, leased since 1903. In early 2025, a Marine infantry battalion was quietly deployed there, officially to expand migrant detention facilities. But that also puts a heavily armed force already inside Cuban territory. What a coincidence. Deepwater port, an airfield capable of handling the largest military transport planes in existence, and no need for a risky beach landing. The door is already open. With that set up, there are three scenarios.
Why would they approve that though? If they thought that US was gonna attack them, why would they approve them to be there?
Was worth talking about. Scenario 1. The Venezuela Playbook. Secret talks are already happening. Rubio has been meeting privately with Raul Guillermo Rodriguez Castro, Fidel Castro's 41-year-old grandson. No official title, but one of the most connected people inside Cuba's military. The idea is to find someone inside the system who can manage a transition from within. The same way key people inside Venezuela were quietly convinced to look the other way before the Maduro raid. Cuba has already released 51 political prisoners through Vatican mediation as a first gesture of goodwill. If this path works out, the regime quietly negotiates its way out. A new transitional government takes over, and Cuba's economy gets opened up to the US interests almost overnight, just like Venezuela. No guns involved, just a deal that everyone agrees to call diplomacy. Scenario 2. The quiet collapse. This is the most likely path, and it doesn't involve a conventional military attack at all. The blockade keeps tightening, blackouts spread, food shortages get worse, protests grow. Then at some point, the Cuban state starts cracking from the inside. Local commanders stop following orders. The whole structure begins to fall apart.
This is actually very, very probable. My mom has been to Cuba a few times, and I've heard from her like what life there is like, and it's right now obviously tension is building, and people are not happy at all with the living situation, which is more than understandable. So I don't think this is even very far from happening right now.
At that point, the US doesn't need to force its way in. It shows up under the banner of restoring order and protecting civilians. The 82nd Airborne, which had its training exercises suddenly canceled in early March, with commanders told to stay on standby at Fort Bragg, drops on Havana's International Airport. That creates an air corridor. Follow-on forces pour in, and the capital is secured within days. Fast, relatively clean, and easy to justify publicly. Scenario 3, full kinetic strike. If neither of those work, the full military option is on the table, and it's already planned out. US Cyber Command hits Cuba's already struggling electrical grid through its control systems. The whole country goes dark. Electronic warfare planes cut off all communications between Havana's Central Command and military units across the island. Nobody can coordinate. The Cuban military is effectively paralyzed before it can do anything about it, even if they probably have a pretty good idea who's knocking. Then the ground push comes out of Guantanamo, moving north towards Santiago de Cuba and cutting the eastern part of the island off from the capital. At the same time, the 82nd Airborne drops on Havana's airport. Within hours, the capital is surrounded. On paper, Cuba has around 50,000 active military personnel, but years of fuel shortages, broken equipment, and economic collapse have left the armed forces in pretty rough shape. Conventional resistance wouldn't last long. The real problem, as the US has learned before, is what comes after. Cuba's own defense plan calls for immediately switching to urban guerrilla warfare the moment conventional resistance fails. And 10 million people on an island is a very different situation from a 30-minute raid on Caracas. What it means. For Cuba, the damage is already happening. No invasion needed. The blackouts, the water shortages, the food crisis, that's all real right now. A full military attack would just accelerate the collapse of whatever is still functioning, displace huge numbers of people, and likely kick off years of guerrilla fighting even after the regime is gone.
Something that I didn't know before, but my dad was showing me kind of like reaction videos on YouTube of Cubans reacting to supermarkets in the Republic Dominican, because in Cuba, in some areas, they don't even have supermarkets. Like, the food shortage is way worse than what you would think. Like, they have no eggs, no bread, nearly nothing. And there's videos on YouTube where they go to the supermarket and they see like all the food there, and like they're surprised. And I think that's like, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it happens in other places as well, obviously, but I don't know. It's really sad.
The rest of the world doesn't come out of this clean either. China is the biggest wild card. Beijing has been quietly investing heavily in Cuba, funding 49 new solar parks across the island, tripling solar power's share of electricity in just 12 months. It's a direct counter to the US blockade. And it means that if the US attacks Cuba, it isn't just fighting the Cuban military, it's destroying Chinese state-owned infrastructure worth billions of dollars. Beijing has already publicly called the blockade a brutal assault on a peaceful nation. A military attack would force China to respond. Not necessarily with troops, but with economic and diplomatic pressure serious enough to make current US-China tensions look minor. Russia.
I mean, this would be kind of tricky if China's investing in Cuba to make everything like better, and at the same time, like America is trying to do the opposite. Well, not the opposite, but you know.
Is basically powerless to do anything militarily. Ukraine has drained Moscow's ability to project force anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. And Cuba has noticed that Russia didn't lift a finger when Maduro was taken. But Russia wouldn't stay silent. A US invasion would almost certainly trigger major Russian cyber attacks on American financial systems and infrastructure. The wider international reaction would be fierce. UN experts have already condemned both the Iran strikes and the Cuban blockade as violations of international law. Latin America is largely opposed. Mexico sent humanitarian aid to Cuba even under the threat of US sanctions. A full invasion would hand China and Russia the exact narrative they've been pushing, that international rules only apply when they're convenient for Washington. And here's the bottom line. Militarily, the US wins. Quickly. Cuba's armed forces simply can't hold against the most powerful military on Earth. But winning the war and winning what comes after are two very different things. The US learned that in Iraq. It learned it in Afghanistan. And Cuba is 90 miles from Florida, meaning a prolonged, messy occupation would have very real political consequences back home. That's exactly why the blockade first strategy exists. Washington would rather watch Cuba collapse on its own than deal with the aftermath of a full invasion. The island is already cracking. The question is just whether it breaks fast enough or whether the US eventually decides to finish it themselves. If you want to see if China and Russia could invade the US, check out the video on your screen.
Objectively, I mean, if China is investing in Cuba, then it probably is not going to be fast enough. But I can't help but think about all the civilians there, because what a situation. I mean, this is horrible for the people who are living there, obviously, who have nothing to do with any of this. But hopefully something changes for the good. But either way, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this video, even though I forgot that I was filming at one point. Please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!